Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, is it on? Okay. So at this time, we will reconvene into open session. The time is 5:41, and we'll reestablish the quorum. We have Rich Senna, Courtney Darter Bruce, Christy Schmidt, myself, Garrett Wilson, Maritza Gonzalez Cooper, Dallas Pipes, Carlin Fryer, and Dr. Christian Kraft. And so let's see. We don't have any visitor comments, testimonials, so we're good there. The next item on the agenda is to consider action, if any, regarding items discussed in closed session.
This right here. Mr. President and Board, I move that look at the correct one before I move on. Thank you. I move that the Board proceed as discussed in closed session. Thank you.
Second, we got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Great. Okay, and at this time, do we want to do the personnel? Dr. Kraft?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I am thankful that we had a meeting scheduled for today because as I have been observing the system, seeing how everything is working, and really wanting to match strengths to the needs, I'm really excited and thankful for your approval this evening for 3 reclassifications. And so I first want to recognize Ramiro Guerrero. If you could stand up. Ramiro will now be our Executive Director of Operations. So congratulations and thank you for all of your service. And Ramiro, if you could introduce your guest.
My wife of 37 years, so very happy.
We are delighted, and we'll get a picture in just a minute. So congratulations, and Delia, thank you for sharing Mr. Guerrero with us, and he moves mountains for us. So thank you so much. And then in January, I shared with you all the report from the NSPRA report, and they gave 10 recommendations, and one of them was really thinking about how things are arranged. And so I'm very pleased to share that Yvette this evening has been taken on new parts to her role. So she currently is Executive Director for the Bernie Education Foundation, and we are adding that she moves from Coordinator of Partnerships to Executive Director of Community Engagement. So Yvette, could you stand up and be recognized? We're so excited. And if you could share your guest with us. Congratulations. Thank you for being here, and we'll get a picture in just a minute. And Maggie Dominguez. Again, we brought on Maggie Dominguez just a week and a half ago and really saw how important it was to pull out community engagement separate and apart from everything else that Dr. Dominguez is going to be leading. And so just a title change for Dr. Dominguez, Executive Director of Communications. For so long, we've had a small number of folks doing the work, and this will strategically allow us to kind of pull apart and really understand better who oversees what to make sure that we're pushing forward and delivering on high quality education for our kids and a great experience for our community as well. You want to introduce your guest this evening?
My husband Dominic, I've known him for 25 years. We've only been married since May. So I think I win. And then my son Jackson. So thank you guys for having me.
Yes, thank you. So let's do some quick pictures. If the board could join me up front, Ramiro, let's go first with you and your wife. And then we'll have Yvette and David Reyna, followed by Dr. Dominguez.
Okay, well, so let's go to the next item on the agenda here, the board candidate workshop. And so we've got the board and everybody here, and it looks like we've got a number of people here. So that's great. Thanks everybody for coming out. We've got some slides prepared just to talk about what the board does, what it looks like running for the board, being on the board for the Board of Trustees, and kind of what that looks like. So we will get going here. Okay, so I'm Garrett Wilson. I'm the board president. Next to me, we have Christy Schmidt, the vice president, and then next to her, Courtney Darter Bruce, the secretary of the board. The other board members, we've already listed everybody, but Mr. Rich Sinna, Maritza Gonzalez Cooper, Dallas Pipes, and Carlin Fryer. We make up the 7 members of the Board of Trustees for Bernie ISD. So that's everybody currently. Okay, role of the board. I'm gonna stand up here. I have a hard time presenting PowerPoints sitting down. So the role of the board, there's really, and this I think there's a lot of confusion. I know there was confusion for me before I became one of the trustees. The role of the board is not to be administrative, it's governance, right? And so there's a few things that we do. We provide oversight and governance for the district. We also set a budget, which that's what we're going to start on tonight. Tonight's the first night. After this, we're going to go into the budget workshop, and that's going to be the first evening of 4 or 5 that will take all the way through June to set the budget. And that's one of the more important things we do, set the budget for the district. We approve that. The third leg of the stool there is we set the local policy. And so we do vote on any of the local policy that gets set for the district. There is state level policy that we do not vote on necessarily other than to comply with it, but the local policy is what we set. The fourth thing there is we hire a superintendent. So we hired Dr. Kraft here about a year ago, and we've had her for a year now, which has been great. And that's, the hiring a superintendent's a pretty lengthy process. Mr. Fryer was the board president at the time and did a great job walking us through that. And it was about a 3 or 4 month process that we went through, and was really good, and I think went real well. So that's what the board does. Those are the three and a half things that we do. Like I say, we don't get involved in the day-to-day running of the district. That's what the superintendent does. But we do provide oversight and governance and stay on that level. Okay, so 4 things to consider when running for the school board. Time, training, teamwork and consensus building, and abiding by the code of ethics. And we will talk about all those things in order here. Let me see. I'm going to come back to the code of ethics there. Time commitment. I was trying to think of how long we spend each month doing Board of Trustees stuff. I think it's about probably 10 to 12 hours a month, I would say. Between the board meeting, which is typically 4 hours or so, the prep for the board meeting, which is at least an hour or 2 if you're going to read through the package diligently, which everybody should be doing. That's at least 1, 2, 3 hours, depending on the month and what's in the package. Also, we are also involved with committees, so each one of us is on 2 or 3 different committees, and usually those happen after hours, and they're usually monthly. Some of them are quarterly. It just depends on the committee and the schedule for that. But most of this stuff is after hours, so if you do have a lot of commitments during the day, jobs, that sort of thing, a lot of this can be done after working hours. We also have trainings that we go to, two conferences a year, and those are typically a 2-day conference. So it's about 4 days of training roughly during the year, and some of that is mandatory by the state. We have to get a certain amount of hours of training and continuing education. You could get those hours in under 4 days, but typically we go to 3 to 4 days of training every year. And so, yeah, probably 10 to 12 hours a month at a minimum. And then also we all try to attend district events, so athletic events, performing arts, the committee meetings that I mentioned. We also are, I would say, very involved in the community. So all of us, go to different Chamber of Commerce functions, BEF functions, Rotary, and you name it. There's most of the organizations of the community, I would say somebody's pretty involved in here. So that's good, because then you're good at you're able to be kind of the eyes and ears for the district and get feedback from your constituents, and then also share that with the district, and also advocate for the district in all these different arenas. Training commitment, like I said earlier, I think it's 10 hours, is that right, for board members? Where's Melanie? For experienced board members. Oh, 5, okay. 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 Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, Melanie keeps us, in compliance with that. Make sure that we're getting all of our training. And we do try to get the training. That's important, because it helps us in doing our jobs, and it's good stuff and stuff we need to be up to date on. It's also important to study local policy. We've got a lot of policies. It's good to read through all those and understand those, because we are the ones setting those policies, right? So we should know what they say. The TASB conferences, those are the 4 days of training that I mentioned. We also have board workshops like this and team buildings and that sort of thing. We have maybe 1 or 2 of those a year outside of those 4 days I mentioned, but usually the TASB conferences are either in San Antonio or Dallas. Sometimes both of them are in Dallas, and then every other year, every other year, both of them in San Antonio currently, and then every other year, one's in Dallas and one is in San Antonio. So they've had them at different places around the state, to my understanding, in the past, but right now that's how it is. So, every other year you get to stay in San Antonio the whole time. And it's just 2 days in Dallas every other year. It's not too bad. Commitment to teamwork. Collaboration is critical. No place for axe to grind approach. We do value diverse talents and backgrounds on the board. I would say that's, one of our greatest assets. So, we would hope that people would bring different abilities and strengths and skill sets to the board, and then we would be able to place them in the appropriate committees. So, Carlin's a banker and he's on the finance committee, and, it's stuff like that where people, whatever they're good at, we kind of put them in the right place there. We always want to stay focused on what is best for the students. That's easy to get lost. There's 11,100 and some change students here, and we've got about 1,200 employees. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things moving in different directions. It's real easy to lose sight of the fact that this is solely for the kids, and that's why we're here, is just to benefit the kids, and that's what we're going to do. That's going to be 100% of our focus. Also, we work to maintain confidentiality at all times. Being on the board, you'll learn quickly that there's just a lot of stuff you can't tell people. A lot of it happens in closed session. A lot of it's personnel related, and especially for personnel related issues, right off the bat, you just can't say anything to anybody about it. And so that gets difficult, because there's a lot of times you'll have a constituent that wants answers. They're going to ask you for information, and you can't say anything. And then also be a fair, objective, discerning listener. That's also important. There's, as a board member, you hear a lot of different things from community members. Whether it be something that's going on with the district or something they're not happy about. Maybe they're happy about it, hopefully. But one thing that I guess, just speaking for myself, that I learned in the first year or two in the district or on the board, is that there's a sizable percentage of comments that get made that it takes a lot of discernment and discretion as a trustee, and knowing what to filter out, what to bring up to Dr. Kraft. We don't want to inundate her with everything. but being discerning is probably one of the most important qualifications of a board member, I would say, and being successful there. It is not expected that board members agree on everything, but it is expected that they put individual differences aside, work as a team, and support the decisions of the team. And so we do all try to come to a consensus if we can. Doesn't mean we're always going to do that. And at the end of the day, we do report to the voters, not each other, but we are going to try to work together and put individual differences aside and show a united front, when it's appropriate there. Okay, we have a commitment to high standard of ethics. Ethical considerations should be at the forefront of every decision made by a board. Board members hold a position of public trust. This requires the highest standard of conduct. Focus must be on providing the highest standard of education for all students. And so I'd like to just go back to the code of ethics here. So this is something that we all sign once a year. It's very, very important. I won't go through each one of those, but for anybody who hasn't read through those in a while, for any of us here or people that are thinking about getting on the board, these are extremely important, and I would go take a look at them because we sign them every year, and it's something we live by. So let me go back here. Maybe to high standards. Yeah. Campaign quick reference calendar. So filing opened for on January 15th, so it's been open a couple weeks now. The last day to file we've got place 4 and place 5 open this time around. Last day to file is Friday, February 14th. And then for when you're telling people to go vote and that sort of thing, there's the dates there. Last day to register to vote is April 3rd for any community members that have not registered. And then we've got the early voting dates there starting April 22nd and going through the following Tuesday, April 29th, with election day being May 3rd. These are the forms to be filed with the school district. Just talk to Ms. Richardson and she can help you with all that. She's very good at this stuff, so I trust her to help me with all that. And so, application, put which place you're going to run for on the ballot, and then sign some of the forms that the state mandates as well there. At the district. Okay, yes, and come to you, right, to pick up a packet and so. Perfect. Okay, so she's the filing officer, and talk to Ms. Richardson. Okay, campaign treasurer, you do have to disclose a treasurer, so you might be thinking about that, who you would select there when you file to run for one of the places. And then all campaign finance reports will be posted on the BISD website. So all this stuff is public information. Sometimes it's kind of surprising how much of it is public, and it's good. I mean, it should be. But as far as ethics goes, just keep that in the front of mind. All this stuff is, it's all public information, and always do the right thing. Here's some more resources you can take a look at that are good. As far as there's the code of ethics there, the first one, and then the board operating procedures. That's really good information. I'd encourage all of us to go read through that, frequently. Bernie ISD School Finance and Legislative Advocacy. There's a lot of really great information there on how school finance works. So that's also good stuff. And then a number of other election-related materials there. So that's all I had. Is there any comments from the current board members? And we can open up to questions after that. Anybody? Great. Yeah. Any questions from anybody? Yeah. Comments from former board members? Yeah. Okay, so that would be it then for this section of the board candidate workshop so we can move into the budget workshop at this time. So, yeah. Who wants the, you got a clicker or you good? Does that work?
It does. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first budget workshop of the 25-26 budget. We're going to go through a few things tonight. First, we're going to talk about the demographic report, because the first thing in establishing the budget, it's going to be good to have a basis for how many students are going to be here. Then we'll talk about where we're coming from to get to where we're going to. So we'll talk about the current year budget for a minute. We'll talk about a modeling of the budget made on some basic assumptions that are just a starting point for discussion. This will be said several times during the workshop, but we're not proposing any kind of budget at this point in time. The numbers will be put forward or just for discussion, and then we'll talk about some of the more likely legislation that's come out so far and being discussed in the current session. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Dr. O'Hare.
Still your clicker? Thanks. All right. So you should have received through Dr. Kraft a copy of the mini update, what we call a mini update from PASA, who's the demographer that we contract with. Just to remind you, every other year we do a full demographic study with PASA. So we did the full demographic study last year. The mini update, the shorter 40-page document, is what we get in the years in between. A couple highlights from the mini update. First, I'll start with telling you a little bit about where we're at. So our current enrollment is stabilized right around 11,100, give or take a few students here or there. It's been pretty stable for the last several months. If you compare our October 2023 enrollment to our October 2024 enrollment, which is snapshot date to snapshot date, that's an increase of 191 students for us. So that represents this past year a growth of 1.8%. for us. That gives you some context of what you're seeing here with the projections from PASA for this particular mini update. So you can see here, they give us three scenarios. They used to call them moderate, low, and high. They've rebranded them and they call them moderate, reduced, and accelerated now. Their moderate projection has us having 11,397 students at snapshot next year, and that's kind of what their numbers reflect. They're October to October. So October snapshot, they predict us having 11,397 on their moderate projection, but that would be a growth rate of 2.7%, which would be a higher growth rate than we've hit the last 2 years. Their low has us at 11,237. That would be a growth rate of 1.2%, so that would be a little bit lower than the 1.8% we grew this last year. And their accelerated model has us at 11,695, which would be an extremely high growth rate of 5.4%. Some adjustments that they've made for us in this mini update. New local private school, they're looking at the opening of St. Peter's Apostle Catholic School, which is going to open to pre-K through 6th in their existing building, and then transition mid-year, they're anticipating, into an actual building structure. So they're considering that when they look at our adjustments they made for us this year. Also, we're continuing to have declining kinder enrollment, so they expect our kinder class incoming this year to be smaller again than the kinder class we had last year, which is the trend we've had for the last couple of years. And in their reduced scenario, one of the reasons why that 1.2% is lower than this year's 1.8% is they are making some room for some possible impact of vouchers in that. Yes, sir. Yeah, they track birth rates, sir. So the I'll show you in a couple slides what the bulge looks like of the grade levels. But basically, yeah, you're seeing a shift of students from elementary to middle and high. Good lead in. So this is it, buried in the report is this historical enrollment by grade group. This kind of shows the bulge of students moving over time. If you look at 2018-19 and you look at 4th grade where you see that highlight of 728 students, you can kind of see as we move from 18-19 to 19-20, that large class of students moves up through the grade levels. And then you can see that the classes coming in behind, the smaller classes in kinder, are lower. So you can kind of see that red wave kind of now rolling through to late middle school and early high school. We keep track of things like that. What that does for us is you'll see when we look at our elementary enrollment projections here in a second, we often get this from principals. Elementary, they see apartments going up, they see new building, and they're certain that they're going to have more students next year than they do this year. But for the last couple of years running, the trend we've had is their outgoing fifth grade class is much larger than their incoming kindergarten class. And so the difference between those two tends to absorb a little bit of the growth that they're seeing in some of their areas. So we keep that into account. The other thing it's caused our elementaries to do from a staffing perspective is sometimes they have to shuffle a teacher from one grade level to another to account for the difference in class size. You'll see we're picking up the larger classes now in the secondary grades, so we'll have a little bit of a greater need for staff at secondary than we will in elementary in the short term. Oh, when we look at just the trends since our full report last year, this is projected housing occupancies by housing type. So you can see here across the years how many single family homes they expect us to grow by, how many multifamily homes. So I compared this to a similar graphic that they gave us in the full report. And what I noticed here is that since our last report, the multifamily occupancy is picking up a little bit. We're gaining more multifamily units a little bit faster than they had projected last year. And the single family occupancy has slowed down a bit. In the back end of the report, when you see those charts by planning unit, by subdivision, you can really kind of get a feel for what are the faster and more fast-moving developments. So a couple of multifamily developments we're keeping an eye on. Bluffview, definitely in planning unit 10, which is over there in Fabra. There's also another unnamed a multifamily over there in Fabra on the other side of 10 right there, and Lemon Creek. And then for the single family that we're keeping an eye on, Shoreline Park in planning unit 6, that's a KB Homes development. What we're seeing is that the lower price point developments that are coming in closer to the high 3s, low 4s, they're filling faster and the homes are building a little bit faster. Keeping an eye on Fox Falls, Corley Farm still out by Viola Wilson, a Regent Park in the Kendall Zone, ranches at Creekside, the collection at Bernie, which is supposed to finally come online with residents this coming year, and Esperanza. This graphic shows you our elementary campuses. This is the moderate growth proposal. All of our elementaries are there named on the left. The building capacities are that next column. Where you see current there, that's actually the enrollment as of October. That's the October snapshot data that we sent them that they call current. So some of our enrollments for their buildings have changed slightly since then. And then you can see their enrollment predictions by campus from 2025 all the way through 2034. This looks really nice for us for elementaries. It actually looks a little bit nicer than the models we were looking at with the attendance rezoning because our enrollment growth has decreased just a little bit. And so you can see here that the work we did with balancing out the attendance zone really does a nice job for us for the foreseeable 5 years. Fabra is the first campus that'll hit 120%. That purple there is when the campus gets to 120% of their capacity. And that blue there is when the campus gets to 100% of their capacity. So we're keeping an eye on it. You'll notice that like Fabra is at 697 for 25-26. They currently have 719 kids. So they do have a smaller kinder class than they do a fifth grade class. But also when you look at that difference between that 697 and that 769, somewhere over the course of that year, they're going to go from 697 to 769. So the pace of how fast the apartments fill, the pace of how fast the building goes up, they may end up closer to 715 or 720 by October. That's kind of the guesswork. And what we do is we watch the apartment complexes, we call them, ask them for their fill rates, how many units they're leasing out. We drive by the neighborhoods in our regular course of business to kind of see how many houses are going up. And then for our secondary campuses, we made one adjustment here in case you're really savvy and we're comparing this year's chart to last year's chart. If you remember last year when we were looking at our building capacities, we had that planned addition to Bernie Middle School North and a planned addition to Bernie Middle School South. So we had added 100 extra seats in 26, 27 and beyond for those two campuses. Because we've put those additions on pause, we pulled those numbers out. And so these are back to their capacities without those additions. And so because of that, whereas before Bernie Middle School South was the first campus to reach 100% capacity, and now it reaches, Bernie North reaches 100% capacity in the same year there. You can see that South is still the first campus to reach 120% capacity at 2029. And the same thing here, we're keeping an eye on Bernie Middle School North's enrollment from this year to next year, just because of they've got that KB Homes neighborhood, and they've got a couple of multi-family units in that area that are picking up speed. And that's enrollment. Back to you, Mr. Scott.
If y'all have questions or comments on the demographic report, y'all can dive into that before we talk about budget.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to make a comment that it definitely looks, sorry. So just want to make a comment that it definitely looks better than I think we were looking at a year ago. So that's, I think, a move for us that looks really good right now. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And I think PASA is getting more accurate on their projections. If you go back to the first year we did business with them, their projection for this school year was almost 13,300, and of course that was before COVID. And then in December of 21, it was down to 12,000, and in December of 23, it was down to 11,169. And snapshot, we were 11,101. We're higher than that today because I know we enrolled a lot of kids this month. But also our current enrollment is a little bit misleading in the sense that we've already graduated like 50, 60, 70 kids from the high school, from the academy. And so we've actually lost kids over the last 3 months just because of graduation. But that'll be replaced and replenished next year. And I guess, you know, I read the report, and I spent quite a bit of time reading it. And, you know, I drive through all these subdivisions and I count homes. And I mean, it's like in Corley Farms, it is absolutely mind blowing how fast those houses are going up. So when they say they're going to do 150 houses in the next year, I believe them, because there's 60 houses right now today under construction, and those suckers go up in 4 or 5 months. They go up quick. And before school year starts, or by the time the demographic projection comes to fruition at the end of October, I think they'll gain another 80 or 90 houses because they're already doing the extensions and the road work and the utilities. So, but I do think that there's a couple of subdivisions, one in particular, Regent Park, where there's no way in God's green earth they're going to generate 111 houses between now and October. So I just think it's really, really important that we really fine tune this as best as we can, because I know the number of expected students projects therefore how many teachers we hire. And it would be nice if we were in a position, and it's always tough. I mean, over the last 4 years, PASA has been their low estimate. We've been either at the low estimate or halfway between the low and the moderate. That's where we've been. And as I take a look at this report and just use, you know, the knowledge that I've gleaned from talking to local people, we will probably be somewhere in the middle again next year, maybe a little bit closer to the low end. That's just what my gut, I'm not a demographer, but that's just what my gut tells me, okay, based on studying this stuff. And so so they can come up with a number at a district level that's pretty darn close. But as we all know through the years, at each individual school, it can fluctuate significantly. So once staff has been assigned to a school, I know we've been in a position where we may have to take a teacher from this school and put her over in this school. Nobody likes to do that, but you have to do it for equity. But it would be nice if we were in a position where we had 2 or 3 floaters, particularly at the elementary level, because we need to react quickly, and generally we do react quickly to make adjustments. But I think that's something we really have to take a look at, because prior to House Bill 3 passing in 2019, we had buku, probably 28 waivers where we were above the 22-to-1 from K through 3. And then House Bill 3 passed and we were flush with money for a couple of years, and we were down to like 6. And it really didn't make sense to get rid of those 6, because on the whole grade level, we might have been 1 or 2 kids over capacity. Doesn't justify hiring another teacher for 1 or 2 kids. But this year, we're not at the 28, but we are higher. And so if there's a way we can fine tune as best we can prior to adopting the budget in June, and then hopefully have the capacity to have 2 or 3 in reserve, because we're probably going to need them, would be my guess. So that's all I would ask as we develop the budget.
All right.
I got a question for you. I've seen these numbers and I love seeing them. Is there any way we can get some statistics with just the permanent structures on place as far as like elementary campuses without some of the portable buildings? Because just for strategic planning for long term, we know the life expectancy of a non-permanent structure is going to be less than what we've counted for on a building. So I would love to see what that number looks like. And I know probably a lot of those are just storage, but if they are containing kids or whatever the unit is, I think it'd be nice for us to know that. One, if we're going to, whatever development we're, looking at moving forward.
It's a thought that always comes up. Yeah, so the capacity numbers that we put in here are the building capacities without any what we call temporary buildings whatsoever. So when you see us watch the threshold between the 100 and 120%, the changes in those two colors, usually we feel like we need a building when the building's at 120% capacity. And that's because we know that we have options sometimes to put temporary buildings next to the building to kind of give us that 20% cushion. But yeah, the capacities that you see on there are always just the building capacities of the brick and mortar structures without any temporary buildings included.
All right, let's start talking about the 24-25 budget. You remember that in June of last year, we passed a general fund budget that had a $5.2 million deficit. Since that point in time, we've passed several amendments. And wow, look at the formatting. That's nice. Sorry about that. It was beautiful the last time we looked at this, but I'll walk you through it. The primary, we've got $104 million in general fund revenues and $108 million in general fund expenditures at this point in time for about a $4 million deficit. So that deficit has come down $1 million since we adopted the budget. The primary change is going to be the state funding, and it's all seems to be related to our property values and that impact on state funding. So just as a quick reminder, pre-House Bill 3 way back in 2018, you used to use prior year property values to determine your state funding. It's called the property value lag. So when you had no uncertainty related to the property values because the appraisal district and the comptroller were settled on that a year prior. You also got a levy that was based on current year and more funding because they were always based on values from a year ago, which were generally lower. And so that was one of the trade-offs when House Bill 3 was passed. Was we got overall more funding, but they did change calculations to current year property values, and so there was a loss from that, but the overall increase was certainly worth it. But what it did make was the budget process a lot more complicated. So this is what, as a reminder, this is what happens. At this point in time, we're talking about the budget. I have no idea what our property values are going to be, and I'm making very general assumptions that I'll be talking about shortly. We won't get any indication to what values will be until April, at the end of April, when the appraisal district will provide preliminary values, and then they'll go through the appeals process to try to get to certified values in July, at the end of July. So we'll adopt a budget not knowing exactly what our values are. This is what every school district with a June year end has to do. Then those values will get sent to the comptroller. The comptroller will take those values and they'll give us what's called a pre-preliminary report, where they apply their own valuation to the values, there is a fun mystery. If you look at the history of what certified values are and what the comptroller comes out with that are called T values, there's actually 17 T values that they assign to our values that's actually used to calculate state funding. They'll use the appraisal district's numbers to come up with pre-preliminary values that we'll find out about in December, and then they'll release the property value study on January 31st, which is where if they disagree with the appraisal district, we'll get what's called assigned values. If they say, if Kendall appraisal district came out and said your property is worth $1 billion, and the comptroller says no, it's worth $1.5 billion, we're going to lose that much state funding halfway through our fiscal year. Most districts appeal the property value study, especially if they fail it, and we generally get results of the appeal in May. So we're finally settled on property values in the 11th month of our 12-month fiscal year. Okay. Several things have happened. I have got some good news from the standpoint of the property value study, came out on Friday. We did not fail the property value study. One of the things that also came out with is the change in frozen values, which is one more complication in this, in that 2 legislative sessions ago, they enabled taxpayers over 65 to receive the benefit of decreases in tax rates, increases in homestead exemptions, all the things that they were not entitled to previous to that legislation. That was first implemented in November of 24 on the 2023 levy. Predicting what's going to happen with the frozen values have just become one more complicating layer in trying to predict what's going to happen with our funding, in that up until Friday, we're presuming last year's change in frozen levy. What would have happened pre-legislation and after legislation is something that they give us credit for lack of a better word, in our state funding. So when we got the new changes in the frozen values from the comptroller on Friday, plugged those in, we got $2.2 million additional in funding. And so the $3.9 million budget that you see at this point in time, at least as it applies to values and the effect on state funding, where it says 22 million in revenues up there at the top, that's going to be 24.2 at this point in time, right? Which is nice. We're a long way from the end of the fiscal year. There's a few things that can happen. I've been talking with our property tax attorneys to file a protest, even though we did not fail. Remember, we didn't fail last year. We filed a protest anyway. That is our practice, to file a protest every single year, regardless. And last year it reaped huge benefits, right? Generally, we get a couple $100,000 out of it, which is great. Last year we got $1 million out of that. But we're 3 or 4 months off of knowing the results of that after we file. I wouldn't count on the 7-figure return on that again, but you never know. And of course, there are a number of other factors. We won't find out about CCMR from 2 years ago until August, 2 months after our fiscal year ends. You remember last year, because of the efforts put in by teaching and learning, that those outcome bonus results go up every single. They've gone up. They have not gone up since I've been here. Is that a good way to say that? So I believe last year it was like a $200,000 increase in the outcome bonus, but we won't know that until August of 25. Okay, and of course there are other things like the budgeting of investment income, where we increased it to 1.3, knowing that we'll probably get about 1.6, And anybody that's in the banking industry, like Mr. Wilson knows, the Federal Reserve Board met last week and decided not to make any change in the federal lending rate, which means our rate should maintain that much longer and earn a little bit better. It won't turn 1.6 million into $5 million, but it'll be a little bit better than it would have been otherwise. So that is the current picture of our 24-25 budget. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, some people may wonder why on earth the legislature would have passed, well, why on earth do they do a lot of things they do, but why would they have gone to present year values when there's total uncertainty until 11 months later? Well, if you go back to 2019, there was a group called the Equity Center who fundamentally hates property wealthy districts, of which we are one. And they successfully pushed for present year values, the logic being that the state's not getting their fair share of Robin Hood by using prior year values. So present year values would have jacked up our Robin Hood even more. And any economic benefit we would have gotten from House Bill 3 was swept away. Fortunately, we protested that. We reached out to our state senator. She was on the conference committee, and they were getting complaints from a lot of property wealthy districts across the state. So what they did was, instead of raising the basic allotment by $600, they raised it by $1,000, which brought our money back to us. So it worked out from a revenue perspective, but it puts Mr. Scott in the position of having to figure all this stuff out. And it's really ridiculous when you have to wait till the 11th month of the budget year to know the rules. You know, it's crazy, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk. There's one other unknown item I'll talk about a little bit farther because I've got it noted on another page. But I did want to talk about the expenditures very briefly. I just broke out our expenditures in terms of the nature of the expenditures. So payroll is $84 million of our $108 million budget. The $5.4 million in on behalf you see is somewhat of a ghost transaction. That is the state's contribution to all employees into the teacher retirement system. So you see the $5.4 million in the expenditures matches the $5.4 million that you see in the revenue. So we had that's just an accounting measure. We have to recognize those contributions being made, but those aren't dollars that go into or out of the district. And then for purposes of talking about what's going to happen in 25-26, I've noted any one-time expenditures. That's going to be the retention bonus that was paid in December. We had $350,000 that was allocated to Viola Wilson Elementary for new school funds for its first year of operation. That will not carry forward into 24-25. Okay, so let's talk about modeling for 25-26. The numbers I'm going to show today are using the reduced enrollment. I have calculated anticipated ADA at 10,562. That's 94% of enrollment. Remember, in the 24-25 year, we budgeted on 93.75% of enrollment. The 23-24 year actually came in at 94. So they did good last year, and we've been substantially better than in 24-25. We've been substantially better than 23-24 enrollment to date. We're about at 94.5. So I wanted to go ahead and increase that percentage. For purposes of discussion today, our property values in our levy increase, I've calculated 3.5%. And then prior to today, and for the modeling purposes, I've shown a slight decrease in the M&O rate. There was a new template that came out today that showed that it's not 2/100ths of a cent, that it would go down at 6/100ths of a cent. So the rate would be 66.09. That's just for calculation. We already know that Governor Abbott has put forward property tax reduction. Is it one of his emergency items? So, and there have been some pretty specific numbers that are put forward that are substantially bigger than this. this is just for discussion purposes today under current law, and we're showing no change in the INS rate as a fast growth district. We've talked about maintaining that rate in anticipation of future elections. Okay. So the projected revenues, $104 million for the general fund and $108 million in revenues. And you'll see that I just got through talking about how we had $24 million currently now in state funding. It's dropped back down to $22 million. The reason for that, and if I can figure out how to project this with any kind of certainty, I will. It's 25-26 is using the 24-25 frozen value change. And so that's why I think we're seeing a big drop there. Figuring out the frozen, but just to dive into the weeds for just a second, figuring out the frozen value change was a manual change that TASBO just had to put forward in just the last week to help districts understand how to project current year funding accurately. So everybody in the state is just getting a handle on this right now. You'll notice that the federal revenues for the general fund, which is comprised of SHARS revenue and the indirect costs from other grants that we administrate, has dropped to $195. I'll talk a little bit more about what's happened with SHARS revenue. It's become a very undependable source of revenue. It gets more restrictive every single time. We just can't count on that revenue anymore. Within the local revenues is investment income. We talked about how we budgeted at 1.3 in 24-25. I have 300,000 in this number, so that's a pretty substantial decrease. I'm doing that for two reasons. For one, we know that it is likely that rates will go down. I do not know much how they'll go down, but second, I really want to discourage any kind of decisions that would be made on investment income related to recurring costs. So I just want to be as conservative as possible in that regard. This model has no pay increase in it. It does have $569,000 at $5,200 per added enrolled student for the teachers that we would need to add. Yes, sir. It doesn't have any insurance increases in here. Yes, we know that that's coming too. Well, no. Now, I've gotten no feedback from our current property carrier on what kind of increases might be coming there. I know that we're going to take a really hard look at differing ways of doing that kind of insurance to try to contain costs there. And TRS Active Care is certainly not given any indication. Normally, you find out by May. So I'll bring those things forward as I get an idea. Sure. So we start from a deficit of $4.3 million. So just the thing to note from this is that we'll be bringing forward several models based on if the legislature doesn't take necessary action to improve funding, we'll certainly be bringing forward models to address the deficit into a workable position, and then we'll be modeling any latest and greatest trend that's being put forward in the legislature. Yes, ma'am.
And what is our current fund balance?
27 million. 27 million. Yes, ma'am.
Which is how many months at that point? 3?
3.5 months. Yes, ma'am.
So if we're still, sorry.
You're good.
So if we're still, let's say at the end of this year, roughly 2 million under, that's going to reduce the fund balance to 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so then we're looking at another 4.5. Okay.
Well, I think what Wes is not telling us, that it's very good news on the 2.2 million, which would adjust this year's deficit to 1.7, but I think you're still budgeting it on 1.3 million of investment income, correct? Yes. Okay, so if we exceed that by 300,000, that reduces it. And usually, you do the sweep where maybe you don't spend 1% of your budget because we have a lot of unfilled positions. I mean, he won't say this, but there's a good chance that our deficit will be lower than that. So our fund balance will be very healthy going into the next fiscal year. And I'm sure, because I believe you said you're going to get to legislation and what we can talk about it. We know it's been some of the things that have been proposed, and it's not all bad news. But we can't celebrate yet because nothing's passed.
Yeah, I certainly hope that the deficit gets smaller and smaller, and would certainly hope for a surplus. I wonder about the 1% that we've done some really good things to address some areas of need, and that has we're not running a lot of vacancies in some of the areas that we traditionally do. Right, one of the things that we did to help address an area of need was to do the stipend for the special ed positions to be more competitive, to reduce the contracted services. That appears to be a good solution, but a longer term solution. And I can tell you those testing in the special needs areas is just killing us because we're having to pay somebody else to do that. I hope for better things in 25, 26 because I do believe we've been placed into a competitive position, but that one's going to take time. Just as a reminder, we're going to have 3 more budget workshops. Ms. Pruin will be running the next workshop related to staffing projections and compensation scenarios based on our enrollment. Ms. Flores will take the wheel in April to talk about program initiatives. And then I'll be back in I'll be here the whole time, but I'll be talking again in May to give those different models and how things look as we head towards a June adoption. Some of the things that I wanted to note related to the budget SHARs, we were recognizing 800. At one point in time, we were recognizing $1.5 million in SHARs revenue. Last year was 800,000. We budgeted 400,000 in 24-25. I don't know that we're going to hit that this year, and because of that, I'm just budgeting 100,000 in 25-26. The HHSC continues to change the rules and change the rules and change the rules after the fact, after we provided those services that we're required to provide by law anyway, but has really cut off what we get in SHARS revenue. Another reduction in funding would be the new instructional facilities allotment. We'll get 400 to 450,000 this year for opening Viola Wilson, but you get that for 1 year. In the second year, you get the increase in ADA from the first year. So I don't anticipate getting any more than about $50,000 next year related to the new instructional facilities allotment. But you have the new school funding that we put in place, so it's somewhat of a trade-off. We're losing revenue, and there's expenditures that we're taking out as well, and our fast growth allotment is going down because that 5-year average that the fast growth allotment is calculated on has gone down as we went from 400 and 500 students every single year. We're adding down to between 100 and 200. So I'm estimating about a $200,000 decrease for next year. I've talked about investment income, so I won't go over that again. Did you have a comment, Mr.?
Just a question. The question I had was on the NEFA. Is that based on our enrollment at snapshot date? On ADA. Okay, great.
Just as a planning tool, when we're thinking about compensation, a 1% raise across the board is 800,000. That's normally a conversation that we've had in the past. We've traditionally done this across the board raise type solution to budgeting. Of course, one of the priorities that Governor Abbott put forward last night was teacher pay. That could substantially change that conversation, right? So if what's been proposed goes through and Bernie teachers were to receive a $4,000 increase in pay, funding through the state, that's wonderful. That takes care of about half our employees. That won't provide a budget solution for us. It's a help because that'll be $4 million in funding and $4 million in expenditures with a net of zero. But we still have the rest of the employees and our non-payroll expenditures to address. So Ms. Pruen will bring in more nuanced numbers for you in the March meeting. And then I've talked about the frozen levy hold harmless, but there's one more unknown that did provide a benefit late to us in the year last year, and that is one of the things that's been added in the last couple of years is that we get credit in state funding for a first-time home buyer that pays their tax bill, then files for a homestead exemption, and then gets a refund on those. Since they put that in place, it was a couple $100,000 the first year it went into place, and then it jumped to $400,000 last year. We won't know that until this summer, and we're trying to find a way to predict that. But that's another one of those things that it's hard to predict how many first-time home buyers in the political geo-boundaries of Bernie ISD will pay their tax bill, then file for a homestead exemption, then get a refund on that. So that is something that could also provide an increase. But right now, that number is based on what we got in 23-24. All right, some of the more common or when I say common, some of the ideas that people that monitor that stuff on a daily basis and send out emails thinks is likely at this point in time is the $1 billion voucher bill that's been put forward by Governor Abbott as an emergency item. He has talked about property tax relief being one of his highest priorities. How the proposed bills have been put into place so far at this point in time is a 3.3 cent catch-up that would be added on to a 5.6 cent compression for the 25 levy the 25-26 year, and then a 6.3 cent compression for the following year. There are a lot of bills that have the homestead exemption increasing to $140,000. That doesn't impact us much on the general fund side. It's just a trade-off between the tax levy and state funding, but it does impact us on the INS side. And I'm going to talk about our debt service very briefly. And at the time I wrote this, everybody was talking about a $200 million increase statewide for school safety. Governor Abbott was throwing out $500 million last night.
There's a bill sponsored by Senate Finance Chair Lady Joan Huffman for $400 million, which would double the allotment from $15,000 per school to $30, from $10 per ADA to $20, which would generate about $300,000 for us. That's in the Senate, and everyone seems to be committed, House, Senate, Governor, to increase school safety. And the other thing you hear a lot, no matter who you talk to, is teacher pay, teacher pay, teacher pay. And that's great. I mean, that's actually one of our legislative priorities, is creating an allotment for improved teacher pay. So it's wonderful that the Senate is proposing that, the governor's proposing that. That's great. What they haven't proposed yet is an increase in the basic allotment, which hasn't been raised in 6 years. Now, whether that's a negotiating ploy to start off low, who knows? But we got to fight for it.
All right. The debt service fund, of course, when we, I'm not going to talk about the child nutrition fund today, but as a reminder, you have 3 budgets that you pass as a board: the general fund, the debt service fund, and the child nutrition fund are all legally required adopted budgets. The debt service fund in 25-26, we currently have a little over 11 million in principal scheduled to be paid off and 13.4 million in interest. Just based on that 3.5% increase, that would yield a $36.2 million debt service levy and another $2.2 million in state funding as a result of increases to the homestead exemption. I want you to keep in mind that this year we're going to get almost $4 million in state aid, and that's because all of our payments that we're making are scheduled debt, and that's the trade-off for the taxpayer benefit when you're increasing the homestead exemption, is that the state takes control of some of your budget and has limitations on what you can do, and they will not acknowledge a defeasance as scheduled debt. We're going to address the gap, that $24 million to the $38 million in funding. We're going to address that gap with defeasance, but we won't get as much. It's going because, you know, we used to get, before all the increase in homestead exemption, a couple $100,000 in what we call the Asahi payment, and it just wasn't much of a determining factor in your strategy. We're going to have to make changes now where defeasance is going to have to, we're going to have to do, when we do the 2016 building bond is a callable debt. That's how we'll address the gap in those. We'll do about a $14 million defeasance of the longest maturity on the 2016, and we'll achieve great interest savings, but we'll restructure it so that in 27 we'll have a large scheduled payment and we'll get state funding for all of that. And so that'll cut that should make a nice 7-figure difference in the state funding that we get. But when the rules are changing as often as they are, you just gotta make that shift in your strategy and catch it as quick as you can, and we'll catch that in 27. Any questions or concerns about the debt service fund?
Just a comment that we're really going to be able to do some good work in February of 26 and February 27 in pounding out repayment on our debt. And, when you add in the defeasance, you're looking at about 2/3 of our debt service budget going to principal reduction. And that's a pretty good number, because those that have mortgages that are fairly new, you notice that 70-80% of or more of your payment is interest, not principal reduction. So this is a good position to be in. And I think the strategy you've developed with our financial advisors is one to really minimize interest and maximize our principal payments.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, if there's any more questions or comments, I put another slide in for questions and comments.
Anything for Mr. Scott? Dr. Kraft, anything else? If not, we'll...
I just want to say thank you for dedicating time tonight. I know we just had a meeting just a few days ago, and just want to thank you for your time.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. It's great. Great to see everybody. So at this time, we will, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are